The halls of Buckingham Palace have never felt more silent. Not since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II has the weight of uncertainty loomed this heavily over the monarchy. But this time, the unease is different. It's not just about ceremonial succession or public popularity, it's about survival. King Charles III, once the patient heir who waited a lifetime for the crown, now finds himself in a race against time. The quiet announcement of his cancer diagnosis sent ripples through a nation already grappling with change. And now, whispers echo through the corridors of power, whispers of a transition that could come far sooner than the public ever imagined. Behind the dignified smiles and carefully worded palace statements, there's a gathering storm. Some insiders claim Charles himself is considering stepping aside not out of weakness, but out of legacy. He knows the monarchy cannot afford another scandal, another fracture. If illness compromises his ability to lead, the crown may have to pass sooner than expected. And all eyes, once again, turn to Prince William. He has long been prepared for this role in theory, but no one anticipated it would come knocking so soon and under such grave circumstances. Yet the prospect of William taking the throne brings more than just constitutional changes. It drags into the spotlight the fractured state of the royal family, particularly the rift between William and Harry. Their bond, once unbreakable in the wake of Diana's death, has eroded into bitter silence and public confrontation. And while King Charles has attempted to maintain a veneer of unity, the damage is done. The drama that began behind closed doors now plays out across global headlines, dissected and magnified by a relentless media machine. Prince Harry's recent public remarks, where he alluded to his father's condition with unsettling bluntness, only fueled the fire. Those comments didn't just upset the palace, they ignited outrage. Royal commentators and insiders, like Richard Eden, weren't subtle in their response. Some even went as far as accusing Harry of betrayal. The public backlash was swift and vicious, with debates erupting across the country. Was this a son genuinely concerned, or a man hell-bent on exposing a system he feels abandoned him? Regardless, the fracture widened. And in that widening gap, Prince William found resolve. The quiet, future king now stands at a crossroads, with the power to uphold tradition, or to redefine it altogether. Public sentiment is just as conflicted. Some believe it's time for a generational change, a fresh face to lead the monarchy into modernity. Others feel Charles deserves the chance to finish what he began, to wear the crown with dignity until the end. But time doesn't pause for comfort. And the monarchy, once a fortress of continuity, is now vulnerable in ways it hasn't been in decades. The weight of expectation, legacy, and reform all rest on William's shoulders. He cannot simply inherit a crown. He must either preserve it or remake it. As King Charles retreats behind palace walls to focus on treatment and recovery, the nation holds its breath. The Prime Minister remains silent. The press speculates daily. And inside the monarchy itself, strategy meetings intensify. William is no longer just the heir apparent. He's the center of a quiet storm, threatening to reshape the future of the royal family. The old guard clings to stability, but the next generation demands clarity, action, and above all, change. And so, as the country watches with growing unease, a single question rises above the noise. Will tradition uphold, or will change prevail? Behind the polished portraits and ceremonial waves, Prince William has been planning something that could permanently shift the axis of the monarchy. No headlines, no dramatic declarations, just quiet decisions echoing through the marbled corridors of royal power. While the world focuses on King Charles's fragile health and Prince Harry's explosive interviews, William has been assembling a plan not born of spite, but of strategy. Because for him, this isn't personal. It's about preservation. It's about legacy. And above all, it's about control. Sources close to the palace say William is ready to sever the final symbolic tie that connects Harry and Meghan to the institution they walked away from. There, his and her Royal Highness titles, once bestowed with reverence, are now on the chopping block. Stripping them of these distinctions isn't just a gesture, it's a message, a signal to the world that under William's reign, the monarchy will no longer tolerate contradiction from within. No more blurred lines, no more fractured allegiance. In William's eyes, royalty is either embraced in full or not at all. It's a decision that many in the royal inner circle have long called inevitable. Ever since Harry and Meghan stepped down from royal duties and relocated across the Atlantic, tension has simmered behind closed doors. But now, that tension is crystallizing into irreversible action. William's choice isn't driven by revenge, it's fueled by vision. A monarchy with tighter boundaries, clearer roles, and fewer liabilities. A monarchy that won't be constantly undermined by tell-all books, streaming deals, and courtroom battles with the British press. And yet, the world isn't reacting quietly. The public is divided. Some applaud William's firm hand, seeing it as long overdue. They say a monarch must lead without hesitation, must draw lines even when those lines cut through blood. Others view it as heartless, cold, a final rejection of reconciliation. But William, always mindful of optics, knows this storm was coming. He's not trying to please everyone. He's trying to lead, and in his mind, leadership sometimes demands the unthinkable. Even within the palace walls, this move has stirred unease. Courtiers debate the fallout. Advisors weigh long-term consequences. Would this escalate the feud beyond repair? Would it push Harry further into the arms of the media, or finally silence the noise once and for all? William has heard the warnings. He's listened. But he's also seen what happens when indecision reigns. His father hesitated for decades. His grandmother ruled with quiet restraint. But William is choosing clarity over compromise. And so, the plan proceeds not with royal fanfare, but with clinical precision. A line is being drawn, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the entire royal machine. Under William's leadership, the monarchy is being reshaped, refined, and some would say hardened. In his silence, there is resolve. In his calm, there is calculation. And with every quiet step forward, the future of the crown grows sharper, narrower, and more defined. But this decision is only the beginning. Because when a family becomes an institution, every act of reform becomes an act of war. As William moves to lead with strength, the wounds beneath the surface begin to bleed. And what comes next will test the very bloodlines he's trying to protect. They were once the royal brothers the world admired shoulder to shoulder at their mother's funeral, united in grief, bonded by a childhood stolen by flashbulbs and tradition. William and Harry were not just heirs of a kingdom, they were the future of a fractured family. But somewhere along the way, that bond cracked. And now, the very image of unity that once gave the monarchy hope has turned into a symbol of its unraveling. What was once whispered among courtiers is now screamed across tabloids. Prince William and Prince Harry are no longer brothers in arms. They are strangers divided by oceans, choices, and truths they can no longer share. The breakdown didn't come overnight. It came in waves, some quiet, some deafening. The first tremors began behind closed palace doors, where arguments over duty, loyalty, and independence festered. Harry, always the outsider in spirit, began pulling away, questioning the rigid traditions that William had long accepted as destiny. Then came the interviews, the memoir, the documentary. One after another, Harry began laying bare a family the world thought it understood. But what he revealed about jealousy, silence, and betrayal cut deeper than any outsider could. And William, the future king who had spent a lifetime guarding the crown's dignity, was left to absorb blow after blow. Some called Harry brave, others called him reckless. But no one could deny the impact. His revelations didn't just fracture his relationship with William, they threatened to rewrite the very story the monarchy had spent decades trying to perfect. Inside the palace, the damage control was swift, but behind the scenes, it was clear. Reconciliation was slipping further out of reach. William, ever the diplomat in public, was said to be seething in private. Not just because of what Harry had said, but because of what it meant. That the one person who truly understood the weight of royal life had chosen to abandon it, and in doing so, exposed the cracks William had spent years concealing. Attempts at peace were made brief calls, mediated meetings, cautious public gestures, but they always ended the same way. More distance, more silence. more pain. Neither brother seemed willing to bridge the chasm. Harry believed he had escaped a system that damaged him. William believed his brother had betrayed everything they were raised to uphold. And in that space between belief and betrayal, the monarchy itself began to tremble. To the public, the feud is a spectacle played out through headlines, body language, and carefully curated statements. But for those watching closely, it represents something far more profound. The implosion of the last great fairy tale. Two princes, born into duty, now stand divided not by war, but by wounds that words alone cannot heal. Some see William as the dutiful son, burdened by the crown. Others see Harry as the rebel who dared to break free. But beneath those narratives lies a haunting truth. Their feud is not just a family tragedy. It is a crisis of identity for an institution that has always relied on image, unity, and myth. And while the royal family continues to maneuver through media storms and constitutional pressures, one fact remains unchanged. The fracture between William and Harry casts a long, unrelenting shadow. A shadow that even the crown itself cannot escape. Because while personal relationships falter, the institution cold, historic, and unyielding faces challenges of its own. And in those challenges lies the next reckoning. When Prince Harry stepped away from royal life, many believed he had severed his ties completely. But what the world didn't anticipate was that one lingering thread, his personal security, would explode into one of the most controversial and divisive battles between him and the institution that once protected him. It was supposed to be simple. Step back, fund your own life, live privately. But Harry, now a high-profile figure living thousands of miles from the palace, soon discovered the illusion of independence came with a price. And when the Home Office denied his request to pay for police protection while visiting the UK, the gloves came off. For Harry, this wasn't about luxury, it was about safety. He claimed the threats against him hadn't disappeared just because he was no longer an active royal. If anything, the danger had only escalated. Death threats, online, conspiracies, obsessive stalkers. The spotlight had followed him across the Atlantic, and yet the security protocol hadn't. When Harry offered to personally cover the cost of his protection using private funds, he was rebuffed. The British government stood firm. Police services weren't for sale. But to Harry, this wasn't a matter of privilege, it was a matter of survival, and he wasn't going to let it go. The lawsuit that followed didn't just expose his fears, it tore open a deeper, more uncomfortable truth. That even when it came to something as basic as personal safety, Harry was no longer part of the inner circle. He was, in the eyes of the institution, just another high-risk individual with no official standing. The very system that once wrapped him in security now turned him away like a stranger at the gate. And behind this legal standoff loomed a far greater question. What exactly does it mean to be royal if the crown no longer claims you? The battle lines were drawn. Legal filings turned personal, dragging the palace into the spotlight it so desperately tries to avoid. Critics accused Harry of entitlement. Defenders pointed to the threats he and his family faced, suggesting the rejection was nothing short of petty and vindictive. But the deeper issue couldn't be ignored. Was this really just about security? Or was it about control? About reminding a rogue prince that choices have consequences, and that protection, like privilege, is no longer guaranteed outside the walls of Buckingham Palace. As this saga unfolded, the public watched in disbelief. Some couldn't understand why a multimillionaire would expect state-backed security. Others couldn't fathom how a nation could so easily discard someone who had once been second in line to the throne. But the truth is more complex than either side admits. It's about the messy intersection of public duty, private life, and the cost of walking away. About a man who gave up his titles, only to realize the dangers that came with being unmoored from an institution designed to both serve and control him. The case, still unresolved in the court of law and the court of public opinion, marks a chilling turning point. It shows just how blurred the lines have become between royal status and personal safety, between responsibility and retaliation. And while the debate rages over taxpayer funding and elite protection, one fact remains undisputed. The moment Harry stepped into civilian life, he became more vulnerable than ever before. Vulnerable not just to threats, but to a system that no longer considers him one of its own. But the fight over security is just a symptom of a far deeper identity crisis, one that forces the monarchy to confront what it truly means to be modern in an age where bloodlines alone no longer guarantee loyalty or protection. For centuries, the British monarchy has thrived on one defining structure: there is the heir, and there is the spare. One born to inherit, the other to stand by, until they are no longer needed. It's a system that sounds practical, but beneath its rigid elegance lies an emotional blueprint that has left deep scars on those forced to live within it. Prince Harry, the eternal spare, didn't just carry a title, he carried a wound. From the moment he was born, his role was predetermined: support the heir, protect the institution, but never expect the spotlight to truly be your own. And that shadow cast not by hatred, but by hierarchy, shaped every decision he would make, every rebellion he would spark. His memoir didn't disguise it. His interviews didn't dance around it. The resentment wasn't just about family conflict, it was about structure, about identity, about being born into a role where love felt conditional and purpose felt borrowed. Harry's detachment from the royal fold wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was a slow unraveling of a man trying to define himself outside the parameters of someone else's destiny. And as his brother William stepped into the role of the future king, Harry watched the spotlight narrow and his relevance fade. The spare may have been free from duty, but that freedom came at a price, one of loneliness, of comparison, of invisibility. But behind Harry's exit, there was something else, an unspoken warning, that if the monarchy was to survive, it could no longer afford to sacrifice its own in the name of tradition. William and Kate have heard that message, and they are determined not to repeat the cycle. Their approach to parenting has quietly, but intentionally, shifted the royal narrative. George may be the heir, but Charlotte and Louis are being raised with equal purpose, equal voice, and perhaps, for the first time, equal potential. Not to become kings or queens, but to become whole individuals within the royal machine, not swallowed by it. Inside the palace, conversations are changing. Advisors are exploring new ways to define royal roles, especially for younger members of the family who may never ascend the throne but must still carry its weight. There is a growing recognition that titles alone cannot build meaning, and that public duty without personal fulfillment only breeds resentment. The pressure to perform, to conform, to smile when your soul aches, these were the ghosts that haunted Harry. And William is determined they won't haunt his children. Yet the challenge is profound. The monarchy is built on tradition, but its future depends on evolution. Can you still be royal and also be real? Can duty make room for identity? These are not questions the institution has ever been comfortable asking, but they are questions it can no longer avoid. Because the next generation born in an age of social media, mental health awareness, and democratic scrutiny will not accept roles that strip them of authenticity. They will demand more, and if the crown cannot give it, it may lose not just their loyalty, but the public's as well. As the young royals grow, so does the weight of expectation. But this time, the palace is watching closely, determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Because if there is any lesson to be learned from the rift between the heir and the spare, it is this: no title is worth the cost of a fractured soul. And as this generation comes of age, the monarchy's very survival may depend on its ability to adapt, to listen, and finally, to evolve. For over 70 years, one woman held together the weight of an empire not with spectacle, but with silence. Queen Elizabeth II didn't rule by dominance or drama, she ruled by presence. A presence so enduring, so measured, so unwavering, that it became the very foundation of modern monarchy. Through wars, divorces, scandals, and shifting global powers, she remained a symbol of constancy. In a world that spun faster with each passing year, Elizabeth was the one figure who never blinked. And in that silence, she built something far more powerful than command. She built trust. Her leadership was defined not by explosive declarations, but by careful restraint. While politicians rose and fell, while headlines turned heroes into villains and back again, the Queen never faltered. She gave nothing away, and in doing so, gave the people everything they needed: reassurance. She reigned with duty as her compass, not ambition. And in a time when the world cried out for authenticity, her mystery became her greatest strength. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her words mattered. They echoed not just through the halls of Buckingham Palace, but through the collective heart of a nation. But no reign is eternal. And when Elizabeth II passed, the grief that swept across the world wasn't just for a sovereign. It was for an era. An entire generation had never known a time without her. Her departure shattered the illusion of permanence. Suddenly, the monarchy wasn't just a tradition, it was a question mark. What happens after the anchor is gone? Who fills the silence? Who carries the weight? For King Charles III, the answer was complex. He had waited his entire life for a role that came wrapped in impossible expectations. His mother's example loomed over every decision, every gesture. And though he brought his own convictions to the throne, he could never quite escape the comparison. The public didn't just want a king, they wanted the queen again. But that kind of leadership couldn't be mimicked. It had to be earned. And Charles, well into his 70s, found himself standing in the shadow of a woman whose quiet power had outshined every monarch before her. Prince William feels that same shadow. Though younger, more modern, and increasingly popular, he is not immune to the weight of legacy. Every step he takes forward is haunted by the memory of his grandmother's stillness. Her strength wasn't loud, but it shaped him. And now, as the future of the monarchy hinges on a new generation, that influence has become both a guiding light and a daunting benchmark. The public doesn't just look to William with hope, they look to him with expectation. They want him to be a bridge between the old and the new, between tradition and transformation. And so, the monarchy stands on a knife's edge. Its continuity depends on honoring the past, but its survival demands change. The Queen's legacy cannot be replicated, but it must be respected. Her reign taught the royal family the value of restraint, of resilience, and of never revealing too much. But the world is different now. Transparency is no longer a luxury, it's a demand. The challenge for Charles, for William, for the institution itself, is to carry her wisdom into a world that plays by entirely different rules. As they do, the memory of Elizabeth II will not fade. It will echo in every balcony wave, every state address, every moment of national crisis. Because she wasn't just a monarch, she was the monarchy. And with the past as their guide, the royal family now steps into an uncertain future, carrying a crown shaped by silence and a legacy defined by presence. In the age of 24-hour news cycles and viral hashtags, the monarchy no longer exists behind palace gates. It lives constantly, ruthlessly in the public eye. No longer guarded by tradition alone, its survival now depends on optics, on headlines, on how well its members navigate a world where one misstep becomes a global scandal. For centuries, royal mystique was built on silence. But today, silence is interpreted as guilt, or worse, irrelevance. Every smile, every frown, every delay in statement or public appearance is dissected by millions within minutes. And the royal family knows this. They've seen the damage that a single media firestorm can cause, and they've learned to play the game because they no longer have a choice. Media coverage isn't just a mirror of royal activity, it's a weapon. Sometimes forged by truth, often sharpened by speculation. A poorly timed photo, a misleading headline, an anonymous source quoted in bold type. All it takes is one story to turn admiration into outrage. Prince William and Princess Catherine have been praised for their composure, their carefully curated image of modern royalty. But even they aren't immune. A viral tweet, a misunderstood gesture, or the resurfacing of a years-old interview can unravel months of goodwill. And Harry and Meghan? They've built an entire new life under the blinding light of media attention, sometimes wielding it to reclaim their narrative, other times crushed beneath its weight. Social media has only accelerated the chaos. No longer controlled by newspapers or broadcast anchors, the public now builds and destroys royal narratives in real time. One post from a royal fan account can spark a trend. One comment from a former staff member can ignite a scandal. Truth is no longer the currency, it's engagement. And in this storm of voices, the line between public interest and personal invasion grows dangerously thin. The monarchy, once a symbol of dignified distance, is being dragged into a world of likes, retweets, and algorithm-driven perception. Inside the palace, public relations has become an art of war. Responses are weighed not just for content, but for timing, tone, and emotional resonance. A delay of even a few hours can be interpreted as indifference. A statement too polished can be seen as dishonest. The goal isn't just to communicate, it's to control the fallout before it even begins. Media consultants, digital strategists, and communications directors now walk the same halls where queens once dictated royal decrees. But even with the most seasoned advisors, damage control in the digital age is unpredictable. And when it fails publicly. Yet the balance between privacy and transparency is one the monarchy still struggles to master. Too much exposure, and the mystique vanishes. Too little, and suspicion grows. Every royal now lives on a razor's edge, trying to appear human without becoming ordinary, trying to stay relevant without becoming reality stars. It's a performance where authenticity is demanded, but vulnerability is punished, where tradition must coexist with trend, and where the crown itself is now both a privilege and a brand. Still, amidst this chaos, one truth remains. The monarchy no longer gets to define how it is seen, the public does. And with each generation, more digitally savvy than the last, the royal family must learn to evolve not just as leaders, but as communicators. Because as public narratives shift, so too must the institution, if it hopes to maintain its place in a society that now asks harder questions and demands faster answers. The British monarchy now stands at a crossroads unlike any it has faced before. Gone are the days when royal blood alone was enough to secure loyalty. The world has changed. The people have changed. And now, the monarchy must decide cling to the past or risk everything to shape a future that feels both meaningful and modern. With King Charles battling illness and public fatigue growing louder, one name rises through the uncertainty: Prince William. His eventual ascension is not just expected, it feels inevitable. But with it comes a new chapter, one that must confront the failings of the past while writing a narrative the public actually wants to believe in. William isn't just the next monarch, he is the symbol of what the monarchy could become. With a focus on transparency, grounded leadership, and a visible commitment to mental health, climate change, and social justice, he has quietly rebranded himself as a modern royal. Yet, this transformation is far from complete. Because what lies ahead isn't just about image, it's about substance. The royal family can no longer afford to be ceremonial observers. If they are to remain relevant, they must become active participants in a society that now measures worth by action, not ancestry. The challenges are immense. Unity within the family is fractured. Prince Harry's departure, the public's shifting views on Queen Camilla, and the ever-watchful eye of the global press have left scars that won't heal easily. Public support is volatile, warm one moment, unforgiving the next. The very institution that was once protected by distance is now judged by immediacy. And in this high-stakes climate, William's decisions will either secure the crown's future or dismantle it brick by brick. Behind closed doors, advisors are working relentlessly to modernize the monarchy's operations. Plans for leaner budgets, clearer roles, and more direct community engagement are already in motion. But change at this level isn't just structural, it's emotional. It requires the royal family to open doors they've long kept shut, to tell stories they've long kept hidden. The people don't just want to see the royals, they want to understand them. They want fallibility, authenticity, humanity. If the monarchy can offer that, even in glimpses, it may find a way to stay alive in a time when institutions are crumbling everywhere. And then, there's the weight of legacy. The Queen's shadow remains, vast and unmoving. But even she, in her final years, hinted that the future belonged to those willing to adapt. William knows that time is short, expectations are high, and mistakes are unforgiving. But he also knows the power of symbolism. He understands that every word he speaks, every stance he takes, is no longer just personal, it's constitutional. The line between individual and institution has blurred, and his ability to navigate that tension will define more than just his reign. It will define the survival of the entire royal order. The years ahead will not be kind. They will challenge the monarchy to evolve faster than it ever has. They will test its resilience, its relevance, and its honesty. And as the world watches, skeptical and curious, the question becomes clear. Can the crown become more than tradition? Can it become something real? Something human? As history unfolds, one thing is certain: whether the monarchy rises or falls will depend not on its past, but on how boldly it chooses to embrace its future. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.